A pivot table is one of the easiest to use analysis tools. Let's use one of the best Excel tools that I know to work our way through a spreadsheet. Just as a review, let's start off by creating a pivot table out of this data for billings for my clients. I'll go ahead and highlight the data in my spreadsheet by clicking and dragging my cursor over it, and then clicking Insert Pivot Table. Let's just go ahead and click OK to create a pivot table on a new tab. This new tab is where we build out a pivot table driven report. The right side of this menu has each of the columns of our data fields, and then boxes at the bottom that we can drag them to. I'll walk you through how this works. Okay, to find meaning in my data, it's really all about starting with what I want to know. Let's say that I want to know what my top types of work were for 2016, and I want to break it out by client. The first thing that I know is that I want the type of work to appear as rows on the left side of the report, so I'll grab project type from this menu and pull it down into the rows box. Now notice that on the left side, it's made each of the project types a row of its own. Now I have a variety of clients as well, and for each of these types of projects, I want to see who I worked with. So basically, I want to show the project type on the left, and then the clients running across as columns. So let's take the client and pull it down into the columns box here in the report builder. You can see now that I have my list of clients showing each as their own column. This is the heart of how pivot tables work. Start with a field which corresponds to a column in your original data, and then drag it into one of these four boxes to see it in a certain way. The last thing that we need to do is actually pull through what I billed each client for. Let's pull this amount billed down into the values box. The values box is for numeric values. The first thing that you'll notice here is that most of these amounts seem kind of low, and if we look in the lower right corner, you'll see why this is. It's actually showing a count of the number of times that we billed each client for. We don't want to know how many times we billed a client, we want to know how much we billed them for. So if I come back up and right click in here and choose Summarize Values By, I'll switch to Sum. Now you can see a few options here for how we can view numbers. We could do an average to see the average of the billings, or the max or min to view the largest or smallest billings. Again, it's all about starting with a question about what you want to know about your data, and then building a pivot table that shows it to you. Once I switch to Sum, it shows up in the boxes where clients and projects meet. The way to read this table is where a client column meets and a project type row meets is the amount or value that we billed that client for that type of work. Really quickly, I can see where I focus the majority of the energy in my business. Pivot tables really help you understand your data, but my original data includes projects from both 2016 and 2017, so if I want to know about just 2016, we'll need to filter out 17 data. That's where we can use this filter box that you see in the lower right corner. Let's pull the year down into the filter box, and now I'll go up and click on the arrow. I'll click on 2016 and then press OK. This filter box really allows you to narrow down your selection. We're not changing any of the original data, we're just changing how we view it. Just like that, we've walked through an example of how to use each of these different boxes. But now let's take a little different look at things. Right now I have my projects on the left side and my clients as columns. Let's flip those so that clients are rows and projects are columns. Bear with me for a second as I'll just drag client down into rows and then move project type up into columns. I'm just clicking and dragging and dropping and moving them between fields. We have the same data, but now it's a totally different view. You could also imagine other experiments like pulling the year into the columns as well. The key to understanding how pivot tables work is to understand how these four boxes work. For each field, do you want to be able to filter on them, see them as rows or columns, or pull through the values? Again, it's all about asking a question that you want to know and then building a pivot table that facilitates it. I'm Andrew Childress for Envato Tuts Plus, and thanks so much for joining me.